Welcome back, students. I hope you have gone through the entire poem from the text provided and are clear about all the stanzas. So, before we move on to the explanation of the last two stanzas of the poem, let's recapitulate what we did in the first video. We talked about the poet, we talked about how the poet has suggested some dangerous ways of identifying wild animals, out of which the first one was the Asian lion. Then we talked about how to identify the tiger. Make sure whenever you are learning the physical traits or the personality traits of any animal, so that you can differentiate between the two, you should know how to make a comparison between two animals also. That can be another question under the category where you'll be getting short answer type questions. Then we talked about the leopard, and in the fourth stanza we talked about how to identify a bear. Now let's move on to the next stanza of the poem and make out how well you have comprehended the last two stanzas. So the poet says, though to distinguish beasts of prey a novice might nonplus, the crocodile you always may tell from the hyena thus. Hyenas come with merry smiles, but if they weep, they are crocodiles. So the poet says it's really very difficult for a novice, a beginner, to make out which animal is which. That is how different beasts of animals are different from each other. He will definitely be confused. It will be very easy for him to get confused. But he says there is one very clear method of identifying and differentiating between a hyena and a crocodile. Just look at their facial expressions. If you see a merry smile on the face of a hyena before he is attacking you, it's a hyena. And if you see tears in any of the beast's eyes, it means it's a crocodile. Hyena smiles are deceptive by nature because definitely their intentions are very wild. Their intentions are really dangerous. They intend to eat the other animal or the other being. But if they weep, they are crocodiles. It's just said that crocodiles generally have tears in their eyes. Definitely the reason is not emotional, that they are repenting about killing another animal, but the point is that there are certain physiological reasons why crocodiles do have tears in their eyes, one of which is said to be that they lubricate their eyes when they are out of water for a long time. So the tears in the crocodile's eyes and the smiles on the hyena's face can easily make you understand how a hyena is different from a crocodile. Now let's have a better understanding of this stanza. The poet describes the crocodile and the hyena again humorously. The crocodile has tears in his eyes when it comes near its victim or is preying upon it. The hyena has happy smiles on its face. But this is not so. The hyena's face is made like this. It appears to be that he is smiling. There is a natural expression on his face that appears to us that he is smiling. There is one thing that I would like to draw your attention towards in this stanza. That is the use of the word nonplus over here. Nonplus. A novice might nonplus. The word should have been nonplussed. A novice might be nonplussed. Nonplussed means to be confused. So again the poet has omitted the use of the word sed over here just to make sure that the rhyme scheme in the entire stanza is maintained, thereby clearly indicating that he has used his poetic license once again. Now moving on to the next slide, let's move on to the last stanza of the poem. The true chameleon is small, a lizard sort of thing. He hasn't any ears at all and not a single wing. If there is nothing on the tree, 'tis the chameleon you see. Here the poet has suggested us certain ways of differentiate between a chameleon and a lizard. She says that you can find a lizard and a chameleon on a tree as well. But how will you make out how a chameleon is different than a lizard? So according to the poet, a true chameleon is small in size. It appears much like a lizard, but there is one difference. That is, a lizard and a chameleon both don't have ears, don't have wings. But how will you differentiate between both of them when you cannot find anything on a tree, but the creature is still there? You can make out this is a chameleon. Now what is this that doesn't let us make out if there was some creature on the tree? That is the camouflaging capability of a chameleon. We know that chameleons generally merge with the surroundings. They change their appearance. There are certain reasons why it happens. So their camouflaging capability would easily make us understand how a chameleon is different from a lizard. Again, I would like to highlight one thing over here, that the poet has omitted a letter in this very line. I'll not tell you which device she has used, but definitely you are going to make out yourself which device has been used over here. Let's have a better understanding of this stanza once again. A chameleon resembles a lizard, small in size, both of them are. It is small and has no wings. Both of them, they don't have wings and they are small in size. The poet says that when there is nothing visible on the tree, that is, the chameleon definitely must have camouflaged itself with the tree, with the surrounding itself. You are unable to make out if there is something or not. Then you would understand that it would be a chameleon. So this is how we put an end to this poem, and let's recapitulate certain new words we learned in this poem. First one was tawny. Tawny means something brownish yellow. We use this word for Asian lion. Then roaring sound, yeah, you have to make this thing very clear that the poet has used this word twice in the poem, and whenever she has used this word, the intention is definitely different. When the word roar has been used for a lion, definitely it gives us a horrifying effect. And when the word roar is used for us, that is when we are being attacked by the leopard, this roaring sound is a terrified effect of ours which is reflected through this term roar. That means we ourselves are terrified and we are roaring in pain, and the lion was roaring in perspective of horrifying us, terrifying us. So you need to understand that lion roars, cat meows, and dog barks. This tiger is roaring at the lady in the forest. And remember, you have to make out that the word roar has been used for us when we ourselves are terrified. So definitely the meaning conveyed is totally opposite in both the stanzas. Discern is to see, discern is to make out, as I told you earlier also. Strolling is just a wandering, it's just brisk walking, and novice is a beginner. Now let's move on to how the poet has created humor in the poem. The poet creates humor by describing various beasts of prey differently. It's by the use of words and emotions. If you can make out the word cress used for bear, the Bengal tiger is never noble in his heart, but the nobility here has been talked about the aristocracy he has. The leopard kills his prey in moments. His crying won't save him. His crying here stands for our crying, the person who is going to be the prey of leopard. The bear's hug is never loving. I told you about the word cress. Definitely it's not a gentle touch. The hyena never smiles happily. Never smiles happily. It's a natural facial expression that a hyena has. It appears to be smiling, but definitely it is not smiling at all. So this is how we put an end to the explanation of this poem. And I'll just take up with you a few little devices in this poem. So in the first stanza, I have already discussed some of the devices used in the poem. So I'll be just retouching them along with certain other devices which we left earlier. So in the first stanza, we can make out that the poet has repeated the sound of O, the vowel O. You, should, and go. Whenever a vowel sound is repeated in a line in a poem, it's said that the poet has used the device of assonance. So in the very first stanza, the poet has used the device of assonance thrice. In the very first line, then it is in the third line, should, to, you. Then in the second last line, roars, you, and you again. So we can say that the poet has used the device of assonance thrice, that is a repetition of a vowel sound within a line. I hope you all are familiar with how many vowel sounds do we have. We have 5 vowels, but the sounds are many. I want you to make out. Yes, Google it and find out how many vowel sounds and how many consonants you have. We'll discuss it in our E-class, okay? So the next device that I'm going to talk about here is that we didn't talk earlier, that is use of the device inversion. Inversion is when you change the order of certain words, that is you just change the structure of the sentence as to how it should have been, but the structure has been altered so that it matches with the rhyme or so that the purpose of the poet is fulfilled. Like in the third line we can make out, and if there should to you advance. If you have to make out the correct structure of this line, it would not be so. And if there should to you advance is the wrong structure of words used over here. So the basic reason why the poet has changed the order of the words is that she wants the word chance to rhyme with advance. So the poet has changed the order of words to create rhythm in the poem, to maintain the rhyme scheme, and the device used here is inversion. Inversion is to reverse the order. Then the next device that we earlier have already talked about is in the last 2 lines. I'll not tell you the device. Go and check out the first video and make out which device was used over here. I'll not re-explain, I'll just name it over here. The device was the device of elision, and definitely there's a rhyme scheme in this stanza also. What is the rhyme schemes? It is A, B. Is it right? No, it's A, B, C, and C. Remember, the last sounds should be same if you are using one letter for it, like chance and advance, ants and ants. That is the reason we are using one letter. Then east and beast ka east. So again letter B is used over here. Die and line. Otherwise dying g will never rhyme with line. But the omission of the letter G definitely serves the purpose over here. And the rhyme scheme of this stanza is A, B, C, C. Now I am not going to repeat this rhyme scheme again in the other stanzas, because the poet has maintained the same rhyme scheme in all the other stanzas also. You'll check that out yourself. Now let's move on to the next stanzas and make out which devices have been used by the poet. So let's move on to the second stanza. There are certain devices we have already discussed in our previous classes also, so probably I won't be rediscussing them. I want you to check out which device the poet has used over here. It starts with, I'm not going to complete this, make out yourself. Then again we have assonance in this stanza also, when the poet has repeated the sound O over here, the vowel sound O over here. It can be in any form, O, U. If the vowel letter is O and the sound is there, we call it assonance. Again, the device of inversion has been used in the last line. The Bengal tiger to discern. The order of words has been changed. It would have been to discern the Bengal tiger. But the main intention of the poet is to maintain the rhyme, the rhythm of the poem. So in the last line we have inversion. Yes. Let's move on to the next stanza. Now I'm going to omit a few devices that we have discussed in the previous stanzas. You'll make out which device has been used. I'm just going to underline for you. Make out which device has been used. I'll just pinpoint, yes, there is a device used over here, and you'll be making out. Yeah. There is one device that you have earlier done in your grade 9 also. And in this stanza also we have that device used at a number of places. Now it's going to be your take as to find out where the poet has used that very device. I'm going to name it over here and you'll find out where the poet has used that device. Yeah, pen it down in your registers and then find out where the poet has used enjambment, in which stanzas it has been used and in which stanzas it has not been used. So here the poet has used one more device, that is that you are not so familiar with. We have talked about assonance, but we haven't talked about consonance. So in this line we can make out that sir sound has been repeated quite a number of times. As soon as he has, sir sound has been repeated, but it's not the initial sound. It comes anywhere in between. When we talk about vowel sounds, it has to be a vowel sound. When we talk about alliteration, it has to be the first sound. And when we talk about a sound that is repeated, which is not a vowel sound, but which can come in between a word also, like in this case it is so, we say that the poet has used the device of consonance. Okay. Another device we have already discussed here. One device we discussed here. You will make out. And one I talked you to make out yourself. You will make out which the device is. Let's move on to the next stanza. In this stanza, let's see which devices the poet has come up with. I'm just leaving a few things for you to make out also. Okay, in this stanza I have already missed on one, that is who hugs. Who hugs. Now you can make out the letters are different but the sound is same. The sound is that of H and it is coming in the beginning, so this will be alliteration. Moving on to the next stanza. Rhyme scheme, you can always check out if it is same or not. I'm not going to discuss with you again this. Yeah. Coming on to this stanza, I'm going to underline one device and you'll make out yourself which the device is. Yeah, here. And then here I discussed when I explained this stanza. And there is one device I talked you people to find. I'm just giving you one example over here. So this is what we are done with. The poem is done. The devices have been discussed. So that is it. Okay, good.